And welcome to another edition of the Big Nick Energy Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Joe Yolk. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Pods, and Podbean. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Join our Facebook group and join our Chalkboard. It's the new messaging app we're using for sports and gambling. We are 37 members away from doing a Knicks ticket giveaway, so make sure to join our Chalkboard. It's on our Twitter page. And I have a very, very special guest. I'm super excited. He is currently the local sports writer for the Palm Beach Post of no other Knicks fandom notoriety. Marc Berman. Marc, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Joe. I'll be back in the gym tonight covering some local basketball out here in Palm Beach.
I love it. How is retirement been for you from the New York Post to go down to Florida?
Oh, it's been tremendous. We get sun every day. I miss the beat a little bit, but the sunshine and playing tennis 12 months a year, it's a dream.
Gorgeous.
I live right by the water, and I'm having a great time.
Marc, we're both inside right now, and I live in Connecticut. It's cold enough inside my apartment that I still wear a hat, and we have the same haircut, so I'm very jealous of you, sir.
I burned all those hats I had. I had like 5 of them, and did not take any of them to Florida. Although during Christmas it did get to like 49 degrees.
I would probably still wear one. Marc, the first question I want to ask you, I know you do have to go to the game after this, so I have a 4-question write-up for you. The first thing, a little history about yourself for any listeners. I know I would say 90% of listeners probably know who you are, but you wrote for the New York Post for 23 years as the Knicks beat writer, and then also covering tennis. Like you said, you play tennis every month of the year now in Florida. How did you get into the Knicks beat writing? And then how was it that you stayed in doing both basketball and tennis? Because a lot of their seasons do cross-sect a little bit.
Yeah, well, I was at the Post 25 years, starting out as the Islanders beat writer for 2 years. And then they wanted me on the Knicks. Kevin Kernan was there for 1 season. I didn't get along well with Jeff Van Gundy. And the sports editor at the time, Greg Gallo, asked me if I wanted to do the Knicks. And, I grew up a big Islander fan from Long Island. And, it was a tough call, but the Knicks are obviously one of the top beats of the paper. And unfortunately, the Islanders, they just don't have the fan base.
Yeah.
So in 1999, 2000 was my first year. 23 seasons I did, and then announced I was stepping away on the first day of training camp. And no regrets. I'm having a great time in Florida, as I said.
God bless you, man. I hope to get to the retirement and living in Florida one day. Hopefully Florida before retirement. I don't know if I want to wait that long.
Yeah, the July-August weather is a little rough, a little hot, but if you could survive that, you got 10 months of just paradise.
That is gorgeous. How long were you also a tennis beat writer for?
Yeah, so I covered the U.S. Open for 25 or 26 straight U.S. Open, starting in '97. Before I joined the Post, I was covering tennis for a couple of smaller newspapers that I had worked for. Loved the U.S. Open. It was such a respite from the Knicks grind. It was 3 weeks. Yeah, it was a 3-week gig. 1 week of hyping up the U.S. Open, and then the fortnight, the 2 weeks of great tennis. And if any Knicks fan has not been to Flushing Meadows, they gotta go. And I always recommend the first week of the tournament, where you got top 10 players playing on the smaller courts, and it's a very intimate setting. But I really did love covering the Open.
I love that. Got to put that on my bucket list as well now that you recommended it. To jump into more of the Knicks stuff, one of your not more famous, I would say, over your career, but more because of recency bias. I know you've talked about this multiple times. Vin and Ange, the 2 guys I do BKE with that are not currently here, wanted me to ask you about the relaxed Berman. So just for old time's sakes, you could just dive into this for like 45 seconds about the Mitchell Robinson podium that one time, if you don't mind.
I don't remember. They may have gotten blown out by Charlotte. I can't remember. It was a terrible performance. And Tom Thibodeau had spoken in cliches, and we really weren't getting anything out of the post game. no one seemed that upset, and it was a really dispiriting performance. And I just asked Mitchell, uh, you guys really didn't compete out there. What was going on? It was an afternoon game.
Yeah.
And then Mitchell went into his thing. The meme that goes around, I then asked the question again, and he actually gave a decent answer, but no, everyone just has the relaxed parts.
They only made the GIF that's 3
humor.
seconds. They cut out the video.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it was fun. Listen, Mitchell and I have been at it before the Zoom situation and before the podiums. He was busting on me in the locker room. He said I looked like a bus driver. And the joke used to be that I am a bus driver. In fact, I drive all the writers in a bus to the game on the road. So, yeah, he's got a great sense of humor. He's come a long way. He was so quiet in his rookie year, and he's really grown into quite a charismatic dude. I wish I was in the locker room again, because I hadn't been in the locker room for, those last 2 seasons. And
because
now
of COVID, yeah.
And now the reporters are back in the locker room schmoozing with the players, stuff that you guys probably don't see on any of the videos.
To use the Mitch thing as a jumping point for the next one, because obviously, like I said, recency bias is why that's on everyone's mind, especially being the last year of you writing for the Post and beating the Knicks. What other times have you had like a humorous time or a good banter back and forth with a player or a coach that people might have forgotten to the test of time?
Well, it was humorous to me because my son was standing right there. But there's some video of Julius Randle and myself going at it in Los Angeles at UCLA about trade rumors. And Julius was in his rotten mood because he was in a rotten mood all of last season.
Yep.
And so we went back and forth, and it was ugly. And the humorous part, and my son and I still laugh, he was standing right to my left. Julius had no idea that he was battling me with my son standing next to me. My son actually videotaped it. And I didn't think, the Knicks website was there. And I didn't think anyone would ever see it. We walked, we drove home, and all of a sudden I see this video up. I thought that there was no way the Knicks website would post that awkward back and forth, and they sure did. And I accused originally my son of posting it. I was so angry at him, but it turns out it was the Knicks website that put that out there. I don't know why they put that out there, but they did.
I mean, even during the time of a bad season or the bad time in a good season, you need content one way or another, right? I'm sure maybe for all we know, the person that posted it didn't have the job the next day.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I guess it made me look worse than it made Julius. I don't know. It was a very odd scene. It was well reported that, the Knicks were open to trading him. He kept asking me where the report came from, and I knew it was Ian Begley. I just didn't want to give Ian any publicity and say Ian Begley.
Yeah.
So I just said it's out there. And Brian Windhorst also backed it up. And we had reported weeks before that the Knicks would trade anyone on the roster, obviously. So it was no secret. I don't know what this was battling me about, but it made for a fun video, I guess.
And my half times have changed with his play and their play overall as a team now. So you have highs and lows.
Yeah, it's a different Julius Randle. It's really, my own theory is that last season Julius was very jealous. And this is not just a theory. Julius was very jealous of R.J. Barrett surpassing him in the popularity polls for Knicks fans. And he just couldn't handle it. And he thought the Knicks fans turned on him. And now Jalen comes in. And Julius loves Jalen Brunson. It respects him on and off the court. The attention shifted from RJ to Jalen, and Julius was very fine with Jalen getting most of the attention. And Julius has stepped up big time this season. I don't know if he'll make the All-Star game, but he's a force. Listen, other coaches, every time we talked to other coaches last season, he's number one. He was number one on their scouting report on how to stop Julius. So as much as the fans were killing him, opposing coaches really respect him, which is why I think he does have a chance for All-Star weekend, since the coaches vote for the alternates.
Agreed. I agree with that. I think he's going to make it as well. I do want to bring up 2 more things quick. Thanks again for your time, Mark. Hopefully the game that you have to go to isn't 5 minutes is 5 minutes away and not 25 minutes away.
No.
Perfect. I want to thank you for the support to BKE as well. We actually had a tweet recently that you quote tweeted us. The tweet was someone should ask Tibbs straight up, why isn't Cam playing? We did unfortunately post that an hour before they won a game, and it was in the middle of the win streak. So timing is everything from a Twitter standpoint. But you quote tweeted it saying that someone should actually ask Tibbs, like, use it as a jumping point for why he should be traded, or ask him why is he on the bench if he is looking to be traded. I'm not asking you about that itself, but are there times where you see or hear things where you wish someone on the Knicks beat or someone covering the team would ask more hard-hitting questions that you don't think they ask currently?
Well, I will say that, some of the beat writers went back at me privately, not thrilled to death with that subtweet or your tweet. But in that case, I happened to hear the exchange, and Thibodeau just talked around it. He was basically, Thibodeau humiliated Cam that day. He was a DNP in a blowout from wire to wire. Everyone else played but Cam. It was humiliating, just like he humiliated Austin Rivers a couple of years ago in a similar circumstance. And I guess it was Ian that may have asked him about, what's going on with Cam. Is he ever going to play? And Tom gave a terrible, wishy-washy, ridiculous answer, which would have prompted me to go right back with a follow-up question. Well, is it true that Cam really wants out of here and it's tough to play him in that situation? Or some question related to the fact that it's very clear that Cam wants out. I reported in August, Cam denied it. Everyone killed me. The report was that Cam wanted out if he had no role, never wrote that he demanded a trade. Subsequently, I believe it was Bondi said that the agent has talked to the Knicks asking for a trade, and now everyone reports it as if it's an exclusive. But Cam will be gone by the trade deadline. It was a terrible trade for the Knicks since Tom didn't want that trade to happen, as we first reported.
Right.
But listen, I don't see the post game a lot. I don't get the MSG network. I see the Knicks on national networks, and then I see the post game on some videos. But listen, the beat writers have a very tough job. It is on deadline, crazy turns of events like in Dallas. Sometimes their brains are shot by the time they're in the post-game press conference, so the follow-up questions don't come right out. It's late at night. I have tremendous respect for those guys traveling the airports and all. So in that particular case, I wished that someone had asked a follow-up, because when else are you going to bring it up where it's timely? This was timely because Cam had just been humiliated, I believe, on national TV.
If you're not playing in a 35-point blowout game and you're supposedly a bench guy, well, you're never playing for that team at all.
Yeah, exactly. And, unless Leon Rose should tell Tom, listen, put him in garbage time because we're trying to trade him, and, forget about injuries or anything. We want to showcase him a little bit. So we'll see what happens going forward.
And then one more thing. I have a couple of quick hitters if you have time for this one, but the last question I did want to ask you for sure. Pretend we have a time machine that it's now May of 2025. The Knicks are competing in the Eastern Conference Finals. What moves or changes have they made or not made 2 years and 4 months from now to get there?
Well, they would have had to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's not this roster. So they would have had to make a big move. I don't know if Zach LaVine is that move. Rich Paul is his agent. And Rich Paul and Leon Rose aren't exactly great friends, dating back to their LeBron James union. And I know Rich really he's not dying for his clients to be on the Knicks. But listen, before I retired, I put out the kid from Oklahoma City, Gilgeous Alexander. He likes the big market. He wanted to go to the Los Angeles Clippers. Didn't work out for anybody but the Los Angeles Clippers. He wanted that market. I think he would want the New York City market. I'm crossing my fingers that Leon Rose could put together a nice package and get him out of Oklahoma City. The guy deserves a bigger stage.
I totally agree. And SGA seems like every time he's the type of person that does come to MSG, he wants to put up 40 every time. He doesn't take his foot off the pedal.
Yes, he's built for a big stage. He went to Kentucky, obviously, wanted the Clippers. They traded him, ironically, and I don't know, Oklahoma City still rebuilding. I don't know they have all these draft picks, and I don't know. I would think that at some point, and the Knicks believe at some point Shea is gonna want out of there.
That would, as a Knicks fan, I would love SGA to be on our team.
Yeah, it's a great fit. You play with Brunson, and
Yep.
we'll see. But listen, this roster, maybe there's 6 at best, maybe 8. The ceiling isn't high enough. It's just not high enough. They need someone to another star player. It's great that Jalen Brunson is really showing out in clutch situations. He's become the closer, but he needs help. And listen, even Carmelo Anthony, people just forget he was not a closer in New York. He was a great closer in Denver, maybe the best in the NBA.
Right.
Somehow he came to New York, and all the clutch stats were awful. I wrote it all the time. There's still a reputation that Carmelo was the Knicks closer. He was a bad closer. Knicks haven't had a good closer in a long, long time. So Jalen has taken the bull by the horns, but he does need another body out there, a star level player for an Eastern Conference Finals berth.
I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed and hope that my May 2025 somehow, some way becomes a real thing. That would be fantastic. Mark, thank you again for your time. I have a couple quick hitters for you if you still have like 2 more minutes.
Sure.
These are all pretty fast. So your favorite all-time Knick?
It's crazy for me to say it was Latrell Sprewell, since he and I went to court. But before that happened, I enjoyed covering him so much. It was such a great story because he came in with that choking reputation, and
Sprewell would have destroyed the Twitter world.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He was just so much fun to deal with. He answered any question you had for him, was candid, was exciting on the court. He just reversed his reputation until the end, when he messed up his legacy here,
right?
Especially when he came back to the Garden with Minnesota, and he taunted Dolan, even making Dolan a sympathetic figure for the first time in his Knicks ownership career.
And then the next one I expect you would be willing to answer after this. If you want to pass any of these, just let me know. But favorite Knick on the current roster?
Favorite Knick on the current roster. It's funny, I know I would have loved covering Jalen. Rick, the father who I covered in '99 when I retired, he texted me and said, "Oh boy, I was looking forward for you to cover my son, and I'm sure you were looking forward to it." And that would have been fun. He seems great when you hear his comments. But the guy that I covered on this roster, who I enjoyed probably the most, might just be Mitchell. I mean, he's just so funny, and
he's a comical dude.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if you see it in the locker room, but he's always making wisecracks. I don't know about this season, but in the past years when we were in the locker room, always making wisecracks, and he really has come such a long way, and he's playing very well. So he's the longest tenured Knick right now. So
yeah.
It would have to be Mitchell, and he's one of the guys I definitely miss. RJ and I, it was very contentious last season, especially. Off camera, if I wrote a couple of things that he didn't like, he went at me a little bit, with a smile, but still, it was a little rough. I hope that RJ comes back, and he may come back the next game, but the Knicks actually need him. I mean, he's been up and down, but right now they need his body in the lineup, taking the pressure off Randall and Jalen.
And whether we need him to play 35 minutes or not, it's the fact that we honestly have Evan Fournier out there playing 10 that it's like if you're good 2 of those 10 minutes, you're kind of lucking out at this point.
Yeah, Leon Rose, that's one will go down as one of the worst signings in Knicks history. Even when they signed him, I mean, I wrote the story, and the Knicks, were really ticked off. Scott Perry was one of the people in the organization who thought they should make a run at DeMar DeRozan, even though he was more expensive. You know, Scott had caught wind that DeMar had interest in the Knicks, and the Knicks never made an offer, never made a play for DeMar, and went
Rough.
with Evan. And Scott Perry knew Evan from Orlando and knew he only had a certain upside. So,
Yeah.
uh, you know, Scott doesn't have that type of influence. It's all about William Wesley and Leon Rose, and I'm sure Rosas now has a lot to say, and Thibodeau has a lot to say. Listen, Thibodeau, I don't know how much input he would have had then, but I know Thibodeau, at least now, really respects DeMar. But I know Scott Perry said we should talk to DeMar, and they never did.
Hindsight's 2020. And to think of the what if.
Yeah.
Your now, if you do not want to answer any of these, it's totally okay. Your most favorite player or coach to talk to during your Knicks beat writing tenure for the Post?
Well, D'Antoni. I just enjoyed covering D'Antoni. He got a little sensitive once in a while, but he's such a great guy just to chat with him.
He seems like a snarky dude.
He could come across that way to some people because he would get sensitive when they talked about that he's a bad defensive coach, and he never understood that he was a very good defensive player. But he still doesn't get enough credit for really revolutionizing this new era of the three ball and the run and gun and speed ball, as I called it when D'Antoni was coaching the Knicks. Just enjoyed being around him immensely. He's nicer probably off camera than on camera, to be honest. And, you know, he was, before a game, he'd just be hanging out on the side of the court, and you could come up to him and just chat. So D'Antoni would be that guy, that
Awesome.
coach.
I have two more for you. And then you just said your most favorite, your least favorite player or coach to talk to during your tenure.
The least favorite player.
Again, if you want to pass, you could pass. It's okay.
You could say coach or player?
Player or coach, yep.
I kind of enjoyed all the coaches, so I would have to go with, it has to be Rasheed Wallace for the 2 months. It didn't make any sense. No one ever firmly explained it to me. But when he got to training camp and I asked him the first question, he said, next question. And then I was like, maybe he didn't like the question. So the next day or 2 days later, whatever, I asked another question. He said, next question. And I asked the PR people, what's going on? Why isn't Rasheed answering my question? And they kind of didn't know. They thought it was related to a Larry Brown thing because he loves Larry Brown. And there was rumors that I cost Larry Brown his job in Detroit. But anyway, I never got to the bottom of it. But one person close to Rasheed said that after he signed with the Knicks, I had gotten his cell phone from somebody. I called him on his cell. And I remember he said, please don't use my cell again. And he kind of, I'm really not commenting, and please don't call me on the cell again. I really don't know you. And he hung up on me. And I think that was the reason. But that was the way. I mean, listen, he got injured early in the season and it didn't matter, but he was still around the team. And I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't get one question in where he'd answer. He just held a big grudge.
That's so weird. Just for reaching out to a guy.
Very
if anything,
weird.
Just say it's the wrong number or something. I don't know.
I mean, Rasheed, I told Rasheed when I'm on the phone, sorry, Rasheed, I'm just doing my job. And he just took it personally and held a grudge. And it was, fortunately for me, he wasn't a big factor that season. It was a great
season,
but he did get hurt early on.
Yeah. I mean, that made your life easier. At least you didn't have to talk to him too much regardless.
Selfishly, yes. He could have really helped that team, though.
Yeah.
But he had that stress reaction in his foot.
And then the last question I have for you, your favorite fellow Knicks beat writer you can't say yourself.
My favorite fellow Knicks beat writer of all the beat writers.
Of all the ones you worked with over the 23 years.
Since 1999. Wow. Well, it's definitely not Isola. No, just kidding. No, Isola and I actually get along pretty well. But yeah, I think, just for recency bias, I really enjoyed spending time on the road with Steve Popper. Great guy. We had many, many dinners together, many flights together, many cab rides together. And he's at Newsday. And there's a paywall at Newsday sometimes, so some readers don't read him. He's an excellent writer and a good friend, and he's been around the Knicks even at the Bergen Record. So read Steve if you aren't already. I'm sure most of you are, but
Yeah.
if not, his stuff is really good.
Steve's another guy that like comments or messages on our stuff once in a while. Steve, he seems like a good dude.
Yeah, he really is. And
And
I don't know if he's done your podcast at all, but
he's not. He's on the list of people I have to reach out to for sure.
right. You should. He's definitely. I mean, he's been around, and he Newsday. Give credit to Newsday. They travel every single road game, just like the New York Post. You can't say that about the Athletic. You can't say that about the Daily News, and certainly, the Bergen Record dropped the Knicks. So the Newsday really puts in the resources to cover the Knicks, as does the New York Post, which does the best job on covering the team.
You're what am I looking for? Not your fandom because you worked there for so long. Your loyalty to the New York Post will never die, and I actually respect that you just plug the Newsday that well as well.
Yeah, well, I'm from Long Island too, so but yeah, no, at Newsday they don't cut any corners, and I respect that a lot. And the Daily News, they're still around, but we'll see what happens.
Mark, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate this. Before I let you go, is there anything you want to plug or anything else you want to say for anyone to know?
Not really. I just keep following the team. It's the greatest fan base in the NBA, and it's fun to watch from afar. And hopefully, they'll make it a season, like a little playoff run, maybe. So
if they get out of the first round, I'll do a
coach.
backflip on camera, and I've never backflipped before.
Listen, Thibodeau gets a lot of heat, but no one works harder in the NBA. He knows who to play, who not to play. Obi Toppin is just not first on his list. He doesn't have a very strong basketball IQ. And on the defensive end, he makes mistakes that fans aren't going to realize. He's out of position. He's a great athlete. He's a great dunker, but he's got limitations. And right now, Julius Randle should be the guy going forward in a big way.
And with that, Mark, I will, whether I agree with you or not, which people that I mostly do, I will let you go anyway. Thank you again so much for your time. Thank you everyone for listening. Again, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Pods, and Podbean. Follow us and Marc Berman both on Instagram and Twitter. Join our Facebook group and then join our Chalkboard for the Knicks ticket giveaway. We're 37 more members away. Once we get to 100 on Chalkboard, we will be doing a Knicks ticket giveaway. Mark, thank you so very much for your time. This was great. I hope to have you on again if that's possible.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I always enjoy talking the Knicks, and maybe they'll be in the playoffs. So enjoyed it, Joe. Thanks so much for inviting me and thinking of me.
Appreciate it. And with that, we're out on the BKE pod. Peace.